In this video, we're going to talk about the ecological roles of fungi. So first of all, fungi can live really in most environments, but a lot of them live on the forest floor and they really thrive in dark, moist environments. And one reason why this is the case is because this is where dead stuff is, right? So the forest floor is full of dead debris, such as leaves, branches, tree trunks, etc. There are also dead organisms, so just dead animals. So you really find fungi wherever there is dead stuff, which typically is in dark, moist locations and often on the forest floor. One of the major ecological roles of fungi are acting as decomposers. And decomposers are really the recyclers of the food web. So fungi break down dead organisms and they take the large and or insoluble molecules and break them down into either their smaller subunits or even their atoms. So if you think about the macromolecules, and you probably learned about these in a first semester biology class or like a Bio 101. So macromolecules, we can also kind of call them polymers, although technically they're not all polymers. There are exceptions to that rule. Sometimes they're also just referred to as biomolecules. And these are the organic compounds that living organisms are made of. And they include our complex carbohydrates, which are also our polysaccharides, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. And all of these are made up of subunits, or just smaller molecules bonded together. And some of them we can refer to as monomers. So complex carbohydrates are made out of monosaccharides. Proteins are made up of amino acids. Lipids are made up of glycerol. And nucleic acids are made up of nucleotides. Now, additionally, all of these organic compounds are made up of atoms, and all of them have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Some also have phosphorus, nitrogen, sulfur, and some other elements as well. So these decomposers, which can include fungi and also things like bacteria, but these decomposers in the food web, they can break down these bigger molecules into smaller molecules, and they can even break some of them down into their individual atoms. And that then allows other living organisms to take those subunits and put them together to make their own carbohydrates and proteins and lipids and nucleic acids. The elements nitrogen and phosphorus are especially important because they are considered limiting nutrients, especially for plants, but for animals as well. Without nitrogen and phosphorus, plants, well, really, any living organism is not going to be able to grow. And so these decomposers are able to essentially free up phosphorus and nitrogen into the environment so that other organisms can use those atoms for their own needs in order to make things like nucleotides and amino acids so they can make nucleic acids and proteins. Fungi also form a lot of symbiotic relationships with other organisms. So, we're going to start by talking about this symbiosis with plants. And this is a mutualistic symbiosis. And so, mutualistic means that both organisms benefit from the relationship. Fungi are often associated with the roots of plants, and we call this mycorrhizae. Now, there are two different types of mycorrhizae. There is endomycorrhizae, and endo means inside, and ectomycorrhizae, and ecto means outside. So endomycorrhizae is also known as arbuscular mycorrhizae, and this occurs when the fungus actually grows inside the roots. And all of the endomycorrhizae are associated with the phylum Glomeromycota. And you can see that in this picture here, this kind of dark blue glob. This is the fungus. And then these are the cells of the root. Now, in ectomycorrhiza, the fungi envelope or wrap around the roots. And these kind of mycorrhiza can be found in any of these phyla, so the Ascomycota, Basidiomycota, or Zygomycota. And you can see that in these pictures here. So this drawing here, it shows the root cells here. And then it shows the hypha of the fungus kind of surrounding the root and also kind of jutting into the root in between those root cells. You can see the actual picture here. So this kind of these stringy things here are the fungi surrounding the outside of the root. You can also see it right here. So this would be the root structure down here. And then all of these little fluffy bits here are the hyphae of the fungus. And as I mentioned, both organisms benefit from this relationship. In fact, some plants are not able to survive if they don't have the proper mycorrhizae present. The fungi provide the plants with nutrients such as the nitrogen and phosphorus, which are some of the limiting factors for plant growth. And the plant provides the fungus with nutrients because the plant can do photosynthesis. The plants and the fungi can also provide each other with protection based on the presence of things like thorns or spines or toxins. Fungi are also associated with plants called epiphytes, and epiphytes are also known as aerophytes or air plants. And so these are plants that are not typically rooted in soil. They're able to get their nutrients from the air and moisture in the air and by living symbiotically with other organisms, in this case, fungi. One example of an epiphyte are orchids. And orchids need a fungal symbiont for seed germination and just overall support of the plant. An endophyte is a plant that has a fungus symbiotically living inside its tissue, and this is once again a mutualistic relationship. So this is one where both the plant and the fungus are benefiting from this relationship. So there's no damage. This is not parasitic or predatory. This is mutualism. And the fungus helps the endophyte to survive environmental stressors by providing it with different nutrients and also toxins to help repel herbivores. You've maybe heard of lichens or even seen them if you've been out hiking in a forest or on rocks, kind of like what you see in picture A here. Lichens are just a fungus living mutualistically with a photosynthetic organism, and algae are the photosynthetic organisms living mutualistically with the fungus. And remember that algae are classified as protists. And this is another situation where really these two organisms cannot live independently of each other. So they both provide a benefit that the other organism needs to survive. The fungus involved in this symbiotic relationship are usually associated with the phyla of Ascomycota or Basidiomycota. You can see in the picture here that lichens can take different forms and colors. Lichens are a really interesting organism, and they're actually used in a couple of different ways ecologically. First of all, they are sensitive to air pollution, and so scientists can actually look at the presence and abundance of lichens to monitor air quality. Lichens are also eaten by caribou and reindeer, so lichens are able to survive in really harsh environments such as the taiga and tundra, which is where caribou and reindeer live, and there isn't a lot of other living organisms in that area. So the lichens provide food for the other organisms in those ecosystems. Small invertebrates also use lichens as a shelter. We also use lichens commercially. The pigments in lichens can be used to dye clothing. It can also be used to produce litmus paper, and litmus paper is it's just a type of paper that allows us to test for pH. So the color on the litmus paper strips comes from the dyes or comes from the pigments found in lichens. Fungi can also be mutualistic with animals, primarily insects. So fungi and arthropods, and an arthropod is just a joint-legged invertebrate with a chitinous exoskeleton. So this mutualistic relationship, the fungus benefits because it receives nutrients from the insect, and it catches a ride really, so it's able to move around because the arthropod is moving around, and so it can get nutrients from different areas. It also helps with spore dispersal. So as the arthropod is moving around, the fungus can give off spores and have access to a wider area to try to germinate. The arthropod also benefits because it is protected from predators and pathogens. And this could be due to the toxins that are found in the fungus, or it might be that the fungus doesn't taste good. There's a lot of different reasons how this could happen. Fungi can also be part of the food web. There are animals that actually eat fungi, even humans. We eat some mushrooms. And interestingly, some fungal spores have a protective coating on them. And so if they are ingested, they're not completely digested or broken down. And then when the fungivore, the animal that ate that fungus, poops, the spores might be in the scat or the poop that's left behind. And this helps to spread the spores so that they can hopefully find a beneficial place to germinate. There are some fungi where this is actually a requirement. So the spores have to pass through the digestive tract of an animal in order to be able to germinate. And it could be that the enzymes or acid or just the mechanical breakdown maybe breaks down the protective coating of the spore, which then when the animal defecates, the spore is now released from its protective coating and able to germinate.